All right. Hey, y'all. It's Jennifer Pharr Davis, and this is our last Armchair Adventure Book Club. And they've all worked pretty well up until now. Oh, it's going to work. Heather, I see you have a black box, my friend.
Hello.
Oh, I can hear you. That's awesome. And there you are.
I think something just got messed up when I had to clear my cookies and then just restart my computer, and then the original link worked. So I don't know why computers, they get all frustrated with you and then they don't want to play nice.
This is what happens when two hikers try to use technology. How many long distance hikers does it take to run a Zoom meeting? The funny thing is, Heather and I practiced yesterday, and like most of the folks were like, no, we don't even need to practice. So anyways,
it's probably my fault because I tried to show up extra early and tried to log in like 2 or 3 times. So it probably was like, no, you can't get in now. My fault for being prompt.
We're here, and I think we're live on Facebook too. No one's sending me snarky text yet telling me it's not working. So this is great. So anyways, I just welcome folks, and Heather and I are now both here. If you're here, you probably have a good sense of who we are, but to introduce my very accomplished guest today, Heather is first and foremost a friend, but an incredible long distance hiker and mountaineer. She's done the Triple Crown of long distance trails, so the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide Trail. She's done it 3 times over. And she did a calendar year Triple Crown, meaning she hiked the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail and Continental Divide Trail, all within a 12-month period. And also, she's done a lot internationally, which a lot of people don't know, but she has set records on Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, and that's sort of what we'll talk about today, because that's what's chronicled in the book for today, which is The Pursuit of Endurance. And then Heather has her own book called Thirst, which is about her Pacific Crest Trail record. And I recommend that you pick it up and read it because it's a much more in-depth look at what she did out on the PCT. And it's available, you can get it signed from her website, which Heather, I think is anishhikes.wordpress.com. Is that right? Yeah. All right, cool. So the premise of this book, if you're not familiar with it, is I had all these like acquaintances or heroes or friends who had done incredible things on trail, and they had set trail records. And I was like, oh my gosh, they've done these amazing things. They must be masters of endurance. I would love to interview them. I would love to get their thought process, know what happened to them on their adventures. And then maybe I'll also find some similarities or some keys to endurance along the way. So there are several folks in the book, and Heather is one of the ones that's profiled in the chapter. So she agreed to be on today. And so we're gonna kind of focus on her story, and then towards the end, Heather and I are just gonna chit chat back and forth in the way that we've done many times before about adventures and trail records and FKTs and what we're doing now and our thoughts about it now. And we want you as the audience to also participate. So if you're in the Zoom room, you're able to use chat to kind of give us your answers and your take. You're able to use the Q&A to feed us questions that we'll both be able to answer. Especially the second half will feature audience questions in the Zoom room. So to kick it off, one of the reasons, Heather, I love your story, and I feel like it's one of the more compelling ones in the book, is because a lot of the folks mentioned in the book, myself included, while many of us did not grow up hiking or backpacking, a lot of us enjoyed sports or considered ourselves athletic, or, you know, we liked physical challenges from a young age, but that wasn't your story at all. So what was it like for you to just find your own body and what you could do with it and use it for exercise? Like, where did that process start for you?
that process really started when I found hiking. Prior to that, I'd never found any reason to sweat that I liked. And then, when I was 20, I had a job, summer job in college working at the Grand Canyon. And, on a whim, I took the job because I wanted to see the Grand Canyon. And I thought this would be the only way I'd ever get to see the Grand Canyon. Growing up in the Midwest, I hadn't been out west. And so I took the job, and literally the first day I was there, my roommates were like, "Hey, let's go hiking. You want to come with us?" And I was like, "Okay." Like, I had walked around in the woods back home, but no idea of hiking as an activity, as a sport, as I probably had 12 ounces of water. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was physically horrendous. It was 120 degrees down on the tunnel platform. I had no food, inappropriate amounts of water, inappropriate clothing. I was just in denim cutoffs and the Walmart sandals, just the whole 9 yards, no idea. And yet, after that experience, the whole time, climbing out of the canyon, thinking, if I survive this, this is the coolest thing, and I'm going to do it again. And as soon as I basically recovered from that, there was no keeping me out of the canyon. And I went from never really hiking to all of my roommates and coworkers. It was their inside joke that if you can't find Heather, she's in the canyon somewhere. It doesn't matter if it's 10 o'clock at night. I was just in the canyon as much as I could, hiking as much as I could. And it's funny because at the time, I remember at the end of that summer, I had logged 75 miles, and I was so ecstatic that I had hiked 75 miles in a summer, because it was this astronomical number. I'd never walked more than a mile in my life, other than gym class, running around the track. And I came back from that and just decided I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail. Didn't know really anything about the Appalachian Trail, but I was I'm hiking it. And so it's hard sometimes to really understand why, but just from that, it was just right. And from the moment I walked down a trail, I was in love, and I was going to do that for the rest of my life. And so, yeah, it was definitely learning that this was a physical activity for my body, and I took up running much later. At the time I still hated running. Running was something I took up after through hiking to keep me sane when I couldn't be through hiking. And I learned to really love trail running. So mostly probably because I'm on the trail more than the actual physical movement of running. But yeah, so it was a completely, I don't know if transcendence is the right word, but it completely changed how I viewed my body, because I weighed 200 pounds. I was very overweight, never had exercise, and I out-hiked everyone. All the people that volunteered with me and that I worked with, they all played sports. They were mostly collegiate or high school athletes, and by the end of the summer, I could go up faster than any of them, which is really funny to me now because I suck at uphills. But it's and they just called me the Energizer Bunny, and I didn't care. It was this is what I'm made for, and this is what I love to do, and it completely changed how I perceived myself. The fact that, I can do something athletic and I enjoy it, and it doesn't have to be something terrible, which is how I would do exercise prior to that.
So Heather and our stories are similar. We barely missed each other on our first AT hike. She was a year before me. So she went out in 2004. I went out the next year in 2005. And our stories are similar in that, we really were not backpackers. We did not know what we were doing. We both had, the wrong gear. But I mean, Heather, I was unprepared. I feel like you were almost in some ways even less prepared when you were telling me about the types of food you were packing on the trail or the shoes you were walking in. What do you think, you're looking back, what is the funniest or biggest packing or strategic mistake you made on your first AT hike?
There were several, and the two funniest to me are the fact that I started with 14 days of food because I didn't want to hitchhike, and so I intended to not resupply until Fontana. And that was pounds of just plain rolled oats and plain rice, because I had learned about the AT from reading books that were written by people who hiked in the 70s and the 80s, because that was what the library had. like there wasn't the extensive information that there is now online at everybody's disposal. So and to this day, like my biggest LNT sin that I still regret was before I even got to Neil Gap, like dumping that bag of oatmeal over the side of a cliff. And like I had no idea at the time that that was bad to do. I just knew I didn't want to carry 8 pounds of rolled oats. And so then I like, you know, obviously people educated me that this is not what you do. And so I learned from that. So that was like a big learning thing. Like, wow, like, yeah, I'm going to eat a lot, but I'm certainly not going to eat this. Like, I'm going to eat other food. And the other really funny thing was that all my reading said bring a rope to hang your food, a bear rope for your food. And I had no idea what that meant other than, well, it's a rope and I have to keep my food away from a bear. So I went into my dad's barn and I got, I'm not kidding, like the 1/2 inch diameter rope, like a 50-foot rope. And I put it in my pack. And people saw that and were just like, why are you carrying? I'm like, it's my bear rope. I had no idea. And we managed to hang 8 hikers plus me, all of our food from that rope. I don't remember what shelter it was, somewhere probably in Georgia. It was up on a hill. It wasn't Blood Mountain, but it was like something like that. It was really exposed. And it was super windy night, and everybody was afraid their bear ropes were going to break. And I'm like, we can use mine. And it was the only time that rope got used successfully. They clued me in, so a bear rope is actually like guy line. So those two things like are always perpetually funny to me, that like I had this gigantic rope and 14 days of food leaving Springer Mountain.
Yeah, they were funny. And your shoes from Dollar General in Hot Springs also cracked me up. But
oh yeah,
but you made it. You know, you made it. Goes to show it's more than just gear that gets you down the trail. And then you continued to hike and, you know, moved on in life as well. And after doing the AT and the PCT and the CDT and then kind of getting a job and trying to settle down, you came to a point in life where you really wanted to try the PCT record. And one thing that struck me is like I said, our AT approach was very similar. We were just out of college. We were both unprepared, not really knowing what we were getting into. But I know when I went for the AT record, like I felt like I trained for a long time. Like I had this mindset of going for the record. And when you explained it to me, when we were doing our interviews for the book, you were like, I just needed to do it. And I wasn't in great shape and my knee hurt and I wasn't that healthy. And I didn't really train. I just needed to do it. So what made you decide to try for the PCT record, and like what type of shape, I mean, physically and emotionally, were you going into that effort?
Really like the impetus to do it had evolved over a long period of time. And I had thought off and on over the years about like, well, how fast could I hike this trail, just as like a, you know, an idea. And a lot of that stemmed from meeting David Horton on my first PCT hike in the Sierra when he was doing his FKT of the PCT. And it was a very brief meeting. And like from that point onward, like I discussed with my hiking partner, like, oh, I wonder how fast, you know, we could hike the trail, or how fast I could hike the trail, or whatever. And so that was really, I think, where the seed was planted. And but by that time in my life, I don't even know why the record was the thing that made the most sense. And I still to this day don't know why. It was just this knowledge that I needed to be on the trail. I needed to hike it, and I needed to do it differently than I had done before. And at that time, that seed germinated, like the idea of like setting a record. And so I decided to do that, and it very much felt like I had nowhere else to go. So a lot of things in my personal life were not going the way they should go, and my life felt very much at this point where things were falling apart. And so I just decided to go for it with little thought as to like whether it was a good time or not, I guess, as far as physically, because I was injured and undertrained and had never done anything like that. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was very much like my first hike on the AT, where I was like, I just am going to do this thing, and even though I don't exactly know how, I'm going to figure it out along the way. I know it will be hard. That was basically the knowledge of it was going to be hard. And yeah, just going with it with determination, I guess, just to see how it's going to turn out.
I thought it was really funny here how, I mean, you had, I think, this like deep-seated belief that someone can hike the trail in less than 60 days. Like someone should do it. Why isn't anyone doing it? I guess, okay, fine, like I'll go do it. Like that's how you sort of explained it to me.
Yeah.
But then you set the record, and all your hikes up until then had been very personal, and so was the record. But then records become very, very public, and it started to mean something to people besides yourself. And I think because of that, it started to mean something different to you. So what was your experience, and then what were the surprises of getting to the end and being successful, both like positive and negative?
Yeah, so yeah, choosing 60 days was kind of just like a round number that seemed like it made sense to me. And yeah, I mean, a big part of going out there and trying it in part was just because, I mean, you were part of that inspiration because you had done the AT, and I knew at that point you weren't going to set a PCT record because you already had Charlie. And I was just like, all right, well, I think a woman can do this, and I guess I'm going to go out there and try to do it, you know, and see what happens. At least a woman should try. And, you know, the setting out and attempting to do this, it was super personal. Like I said, it felt like something I just needed to do for my life and for myself. And, you know, over the course of it, yeah, I used to get very upset that people were paying attention to it just because I was a woman. And it seemed like I was getting more attention because of my gender than because of what I was actually doing. And that bugged me when I was on the trail. And at the end, like when I was successful, you know, I was actually, you know, obviously glad I did what I set out to do. But the things I learned out there were intensely personal to me. And that was the reason. And you think all of us when we through hike, that's the reason we're out there. We're out there for our own personal journeys, and like what other people think of those is irrelevant. And so it was difficult to feel like for the first time like one of these very personal journeys was under like scrutiny from people that it didn't like were not involved. Like it was my hike for my reason for me. And it was definitely like a period of time of adjusting to the fact that now this meant something to the outside world, and how that changed or didn't change what I thought about what had happened to me out there.
And then after that experience and setting the record on the PCT, I mean, when we were talking about it for the Pursuit of Endurance, it was so interesting. It was almost like setting the record created more self-doubt within you. Like, did I really just do that? Am I really good enough? Like, was it a fluke? And I think a big part of that is what led you to go back to then be successful on the AT. But what was that journey? Like, you had already done it. In my mind, I was like, well, she did it. She proved that she can do it to herself. She knows that now. But a couple of years later, you were back at it again on the AT, and yeah, it seemed like you were out there in a way to put to rest some of those insecurities that came up after setting a record. So really, what was the motivation to go to the AT, and what was that journey like for you, and how did it differ from the PCT record?
Yeah, I only very recently learned that there's a name for this, and it's actually extremely common in high achieving people, and especially amongst women. It's called Impostor Syndrome, and it is where you do a lot or you achieve a lot, but you are incapable of believing that you're worthy of what you have achieved, or in other ways, being inundated with self-doubt. And I actually didn't even know that there was a name for this until maybe like a month ago. But that is what I struggled with after the PCT, because, you know, as we talked about much earlier, like I had no idea what I was doing when I started hiking. And to me, I was just a hiker and I made all these mistakes. And even going into the record, you know, I had been injured. You know, I was overweight when I started that record, just out of shape, you know, from not running for like 6 or 8 months. And so going into the PCT record on paper, there was no way I could have done what I did, and there was no way I should have been successful. And, you know, thought Williamson is just this like incredible athlete, you know, this, you know, gigantic, strong, powerful man, you know, with this tiny backpack. And, you know, how could I have beaten his record by 4 days? You know, like just this idea that there's no way that I did that myself. Like it had to have been an accident, you know, or a fluke, or like it's unrepeatable. And so yes, in a large way, and probably the only reason I hiked the AT in 2015 to set that record was because I knew I had to put the self-doubt to rest. And actually, like early next year, my next book is coming out, and it's called Mud, Rocks, and Blazes, Letting Go on the Appalachian Trail. And it is about that journey through the imposter syndrome and my hike on the AT, because there were several things that I did between those two that I felt like I failed at. And it was very much a very tough time in my life where I struggled with this like identity that I felt like I had to the world as a whole, like how people perceived me and how I still felt, because I felt like I had changed personally, but I didn't feel like an athlete, or I didn't feel like this elite person, or I didn't feel like I thought I should. And it made me doubt myself a lot. And yeah, going out to the AT was the only way I was able to work through that.
So you were hugely successful again on the AT. You didn't just like break the record. You beat another kind of like icon of long distance hiking and trail records, Matt Kirk, who, like Scott Williamson, is not only a phenomenal athlete, but just an incredible human being. And you broke his record by over 4 days. So then at the end, I'm assuming you had put some of those insecurities to rest and had more confidence, and yet still that led you to another form of record, or an even bigger trail challenge, which was the, you know, calendar year Triple Crown. So what do you think drove you to that? Like, what were your motivations? What was your interest in this? Was this sort of a capstone, like, I've done 3 trails, I've set records, I wonder if I can do them all at once? Was it important for you as a woman, since no woman had done a calendar year Triple Crown? What were your thoughts going into that adventure?
Yeah, so going into that, it was something, you know, another thing that I had been inspired to do when I was really young. Right after my first AT hike, I read an article, I think it was in Backpacker magazine, about Brian Robinson. And he, at the time, was the only person who had done a calendar year Triple Crown. And I just remember it capturing my imagination and just being like, at this point, I mean, I only hiked the AT, and PCT and the CPT were still abstract. But reading that article made me want to do it. And it was something that was just filed away in the back of my mind for, you know, the next, I guess, like 16 years, basically. And a lot of things came together, just like the time was right. At that point, I had done the AT, the PCT, and the CET all twice. So like it was kind of this opportunity to become the only female triple crowner. And everything else in my life was aligned well to take a year off and go hiking. And so it just kind of came together. There was no real, it wasn't like a driving force like my FKTs, where I felt like I had to prove something or whatever. It was just something I'd always wanted to do. And so I decided that now is the time to go do it, and I did.
Okay, so what was your hardest challenge between the PCT record, the AT record, and calendar year triple? Which was the hardest? Which was your favorite?
That's a really hard question to answer. I would say that everything together, my AT record is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I feel like that's the thing that has broken me the most and forced me to grow and change and adapt and recommit every day to something that was hard in a way that nothing else I've ever done in my life has. On the other hand, the calendar Triple Crown was extremely difficult because it was so long, it was 8 months, and I had been recently engaged, and like my fiance wasn't happy, and so that made me not happy, and so that was like a lot of like probably emotional tug of war, and just a long time to be hiking, and often in bad weather. And if you'd asked me this question right after the PCT record, I would have told you that was easily the hardest thing I'd ever done, because it was like, little did I know, it was just like the start, you know, but it was also very hard physically. But yeah, I would definitely say the AT the hardest.
Yeah, I would too. Although I don't have all the different record experience that you do, but the AT has a way of certainly humbling you. I will say that in a good way. So now I have some questions sort of based off the book, and I'm going to ask you, but if you're in our Zoom room, I encourage the audience to kind of type up their own personal answers. So you were one of 7 athletes profiled in this book, and I'm wondering if you had a favorite, like reading through or knowing these other athletes in the book, because personally some of them were people I really looked up to when I started out, but do you have kind of a favorite record setter that's portrayed in the pursuit of endurance? Who would you pick?
Yeah, I mean, part of the fun thing about that book is the fact that I know all but one of those people, you know, and I mean, Scott Williamson will always be my hero. Like, he was the person in the hiking world that I looked up to so much for so many years, and you know, we're really good friends now, and I'm really good friends with his wife, and it's been this, like, you know, kismet thing, like, where this person was somebody that just seemed so, like, you know, you know, and like now we're friends, and like now we've both had similar experiences on the trail, and we've gone hiking together, and you know, just like the way that like that shifted, and that's been really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, I love reading his story, and I mean, I like learning more in depth about every character in there. But yeah, I mean, Scott's always gonna probably be my favorite.
Yeah, he's hard to beat. He's my favorite too. And there's just, you know, someone who I wish I could be more like him. I wish more people knew about him. I mean, he doesn't want that, but I just think he's got a lot of life wisdom and is very inspirational. And his wife, Michelle, is, you know, just equally as wonderful. So yeah, they're a real highlight. And I felt honored to get to put him in the book because he's not out there a whole lot. So he's awesome. One of the chapters in the books talks about this like psychology of endurance and records. And there were certain traits that a lot of the record setters seem to like use or have, a lot of tools. And one is like a mantra or a saying. And I'm wondering if throughout all your hiking or on one of your records, there was a phrase or a word that you kept repeating to yourself that really helped you going through the hard times.
There were different ones at different times, but nothing universal throughout all of my hiking. I think the only thing that, this isn't just FKTs, but all of my hiking and outdoor running and my mountaineering, everything, when it's crappy out and I'm in a bad mood, I just have to remind myself that you do this for fun, you know? And you know, that's a good mental check, like, hey, you're doing this for fun, nobody's making you. But I wouldn't call it a mantra. It's just kind of like how I get myself checked when I'm like getting in a bad mood.
That's awesome. I love that. Another thing that was common among sort of these endurance athletes is that at some point, most of them said they had sort of this trippy hallucination, or they thought they saw something that wasn't really there. Did you have any of those really kind of weird out of body moments, or hallucinations on the trail?
Not during my successful FKTs, but I did have a really rough time on my attempt at the John Muir trial record in 2014. And I write about it really in depth in my upcoming book. But likely I was suffering from severe altitude sickness, possibly to the point where I had brain swelling, because I had an actual like out of body experience where I didn't know who I was, and like I thought I was running with someone else, like I was literally outside my body. And when I realized that the person I was running with was me, I like came back into my body, and it was a very, I don't even know how to really fully describe it. It was, I really thought afterward, like, wow, is this what it's like to die? Like, because I literally felt like I had like left my body. And yeah, I had to make the decision to quit that attempt after that, for obvious reasons. But so I still don't know exactly what happened. I survived, obviously, but nothing like that ever happened in my successful FKTs, only on this one. So I think it had to be the altitude.
Huh, that's intense. Yeah, I don't think I knew about that. And scary too.
Yeah.
So like we talk about the psychology, and sometimes it's weird and trippy, sometimes it's like very powerful and motivational. The book also touches on this physiology of endurance, and the people profile, the people who set records, they're all very different. There's not one specific body shape or size. I do think, Heather, you were probably the shortest person mentioned in the book. And you're not that short. I mean, what are you, like 5?
I know. I'm like 5'7.5", 5'8", yeah. But yeah. I feel like if there was a lineup of FKTers, I would look like a midget. Like everybody is so much taller than me.
I asked the expert physiologist, I was like, does height matter? And his response was not near as much as like efficiency of gait. That was really something that he keyed in on. But I'm wondering, like, physiologically, I mean, I think it helped me. I think being having strong legs and having like a really skinny upper body helped me as far as like just weight and strength distribution. And then gender, I go back and forth on. Sometimes I'm like, there's some real advantages of being a woman, and maybe in some places it was harder. But for your physiology, like, did you feel like there was a part of your body that really helped you? How did you feel about gender? What did that play into your mind going into the records? Like, what's your take on the body type that's successful for FKTs?
You know, I mean, definitely the majority of people who set FKTs are tall. So I feel like there has to be something to that. Like, even, you know, I'm tall-ish for a woman. But yeah, I think that it has to do with just your overall like biomechanics. I actually have really short legs for my height. And so I always tell people, I was like, well, a shorter lever means more power. So like, I don't hike that fast, but I feel like I have way more power and economy of movement because I have shorter levers for my legs. So I used to tell myself that when I was feeling like it was impossible to keep going. I'm like, you've got great like levers. But you know, like, I mean, especially on the AT, like the ability to like be long when you're scrambling on all those wet rocks up north. Like there were definitely times where I was like, I'm just glad I mountaineer so much because I can make do with like not having as long of a reach and like wishing I had extra inches. But as far as like the gender, I mean, I've only ever been a woman, so like I don't really know how to compare. But for me, like as myself, the way my body works, like I am naturally, my mom always used to say, we come from hardy peasant stock. And like that was always her like description of us. Like everyone in my family is big boned, muscular, and we store fat easily, and we store intermuscular fat really easily. We lose it easily, but we store it easily. And so for me personally with that, I feel like that helps me a lot with endurance because it's like it's funny when I talk to String Dean about how many calories he ate. I mean, he's another one that's like really tall, and he is eating like 10,000 calories a day on his AT record, and I ate less than 4, And I feel like, yeah, I lost a lot of weight, but like my body had this economy of fat storage that like enabled me to make do with like less fat store or less food going in. I don't know. Personally, I just feel like my body adapts really well to like hardship, I guess, like and starvation. And that is something I think we can be said for women in general, you know, because we're meant to be able to carry a child to full term despite famine or having to like walk miles and miles in search of game, you know, back in the hunter-gatherer days or whatever. Like we're meant to like be able to like survive hardship and still propagate the species. So I feel like that, if anything, is our advantage, you know, evolutionarily. I don't feel like we're made any faster because it doesn't make any sense because the humans had to move together. It's not like it makes us better or worse. It just means that we're well adapted to like maintain our energy source and survive. So that's my kind of personal take on it. But,
cool. So you mentioned String Bean, Joe Mcconaughey, who he was someone who came along and broke the overall AT record a few years ago. And it's interesting, Heather, Anish and I, because we had our practice session on Zoom yesterday. It was so smooth. It worked great. Yeah. But we were just, you know, talking sort of about this current state of FKTs. And, you know, Heather, I want to ask you, like, is there a record right now that stands out? I also want to mention that you said, oh, I don't even really follow it. And, you know, I was like, me too. And I think that really surprises people that we're not, you know, up to speed on every FKT and who's training and who's trying for it. But I think at the end of the day, because I've been thinking about that since talking to you yesterday, it goes back to this idea that, yeah, you do it and you set a record and that becomes public knowledge. But what it really is still is the personal journey and the experience. And that's what still means so much. And that's what, you know, you take with you. And that doesn't change regardless of who sets the record or what's happening in FKT land. But in FKT land and whatever you've followed, is there like one mark over the past couple of years that you feel like is so impressive or you didn't think someone was going to be able to do it and then they did?
I think to me, definitely String Bean, Joe Mcconaughey, his hike on the AT. It got so little attention, and yet, like from somebody who has the perspective, it was mind-blowing because not only did he break my self-support, because he hiked self-supported, he broke my self-supported record by like 9 days, but he was faster than the self-supported record or the supported records of some very elite ultra runners. You know, he broke the record that was set by Scott Jurek, that was set by Tom Melzer, that was set by you. I mean, and he carried all of his own stuff. And so to me, like, that's huge. And so to me, that continues to be one of the most impressive FKTs that I've heard of. So I'm continually impressed by that.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, I agree. Carl Sabe, who now holds the overall AT FKT, I mean, he crazy impressive. He brought the mark to a place. I always misquote it because I think in my mind I can't like conceptualize that it's that low. I think it's definitely under 45 days. I don't think it's really impressive. But to me, String Bean bringing the record, surpassing the overall mark with a self-supported attempt, and then still having it so close to Carol's mark. Yeah, that really stands out. And I think the AT, I mean, I still feel like, and I feel like with a lot of trail running and records, there is this like West Coast bias of like, oh, you know, there's a lot that happens out here. But I still think the Appalachian Trail just has this like very long, gritty, hard legacy of trail records, and some very notable people have come and, you know, like David Horton, really brought the mark and down and brought attention to it. So yeah, the AT record, I feel like is still sort of maybe the most challenging one out there. One of them, I mean, East Coast bias, you know, whatever, but it's hard. I'll tell you that much.
I've hiked a lot of places, and the AT chews me up and spits me out every time. It's hard. Like, there's just no two ways about it. There's very little smooth trail. I mean, the West is beautiful and wonderful to run on, but the AT is just rocks and roots, and it's wet and you're chased and you're humid and you have to use your hands as much as you use your feet. And yeah, it's just a brutal, brutal trail. And that's part of why I love it.
I was going to say, and that is why we love it so much. It is just
Yes.
full sensory all the time. So I want to hop to some audience questions here. One person I asked, I love you, thank you. What is an FKT? Honestly, before my record, I didn't know what FKT was or what it meant, because I think it's a relatively new-ish term. But when I went for the trail record on the AT, I was going for the trail record on the AT. And then recently, I think from trail running circles over the past few years, the term FKT has come up to represent fastest known time. And in some ways, it's a really positive label and term, because I think when you say trail record, I don't know, they all to me still seem a little too fast. Like, people think I was like blazing down the trail. And what people need to understand is a lot of times for these folks doing trail records or FKTs, it is a crawl. Like, I passed so many people who never thought that I was out there setting a record, but it's the shortest amount of time. Maybe this is what I would call it, like the shortest amount of time between one end of a trail and the other. That's what people are trying to accomplish here. So that's what FKT means. So someone asked Heather, do you think that the record right now on the Appalachian Trail, Joe's record and Carl's record, do you think their marks will be broken anytime soon?
I think it's always possible. I think that we always see somebody set a record and say, it can't be broken, it can't be broken. And if somebody breaks it, and I think that there's never a limit to it. I mean, it just takes somebody with enough desire and good luck and good planning to break a record. And it doesn't really matter how good that record is. So that's the nature of it. You're just constantly lowering the bar to push somebody else harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked with both Joe's and Carol's record, because you start to see what you start to see with records and with people like Heather. I mean, she took days off the record, and then, but it gets to a point where people are chipping away and taking hours or half days off. So I think it's rare at this point on these long trails to see people still take such big chunks off the time. And it's certainly happening. So yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. And I'm surprised and impressed when people set records, but like Heather, you know, I kind of have this feeling of anything's possible. I mean, you know, you're going out to see what's possible. So who knows?
Yeah.
I'm very happy to like sit back in my bathrobe with a glass of wine and be like, oh, that must have hurt.
Yeah.
That seems
That's
painful.
how I feel about watching Barkley on Twitter now. I'm like, oh, this is how everybody else does it, eating ice cream and refreshing Twitter. This is way easier.
Yeah. I feel like we enjoy it more knowing the pain, though, right? Like, that's the reward, is you know the pain and you're not there. So a friend and a former author of the book club, Cara Richardson Whiteley, who wrote Gorge, she asked, she goes, I'm taking on the long trail this summer. She's not a newbie hiker. Maybe I would say getting her feet wet with backpacking. But she says, would you recommend doing a few days and then taking a break, or being consistent and going out day after day after day? And she says her family will be renting a house in Vermont. So she has the option of breaking it up. And I think there is something with, Heather, I'll throw this question your way, but the record, the one nice thing about it is it's like muscle memory. You don't question it. Like, you just wake up and you hike. And there is something to that consistency, especially when you have a very hard objective at hand, or a goal that's motivating you. There's something really nice to that consistency and that purpose. But then again, your body likes rest. So Heather, how would you approach that? Do you believe in like being consistent or giving your body breaks?
I think that unless you have something like an FKT driving you, it's good to just listen to your body and remain as flexible as possible. and this is something I tell people like that I've coached in the past and stuff like that, is like, your body will tell you very clearly, I need a break. And it's good to allow for that. Like, don't set yourself locked into a schedule that you don't know you can keep. And I think that, you know, by and large, our bodies are capable of doing immense things without rest, but at some point it catches up to you and it has to heal, and your body will shut you down. And you don't ever want to reach that point, you know, and especially not if you're just out for a casual backpacking trip. So I think like the great thing, like something with the long trail, like I don't know how much road access there is, but if you can plan to go out for a few days and be met by family, if you don't want to go out again, they bring you your resupply, you go back, you come back, or you just take a resupply and say, yeah, I'm going to keep going. So allow, you know, if you have that flexibility, that's great. Because, you know, you want to just allow for your body's natural healing processes, and over time it adapts and you can do more and more and more. But until you reach the point where you really know, you know, at this point I've got it pretty dialed, like how many days in a row I can hike at what capacity before I need a day off. You know, I've kind of got that figured out, but I've been hiking since I was 20. You know, it's almost 2 decades of hiking. So I've kind of, and still there's times where I'm surprised. I'm like, you know, maybe that's just been getting older now. But like some days I'm just like, wow, I'm really sore. Like I think I need a day off. That surprises me. But yeah, so definitely remaining flexible in your schedule.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you have flexibility, you have flexibility. So listen to your body and the trail and the weather and your family, and you know, the right decision will make itself clear. It's a gift to have that flexibility. And we're getting to the point where we probably need to start wrapping up. But Heather, once again, if you haven't read it, her book Thirst, which talks about her record on the PCT, is so well written. It's so inspiring. You can get it autographed from Heather directly at her website, which is Anish Hikes, ANISH hikes.wordpress.com. And Heather, I was thinking maybe one of the things you could mention before we sign off is just like what upcoming work projects or books or hikes that you have. I mean, I know it's COVID world, so everything's changed, but what are some upcoming projects that you have or you're looking forward to that you want to share with us?
So I mentioned earlier, you know, my next book is coming out next spring, and so I'm in the copy edit process with that. So I'm really excited about sharing that story. And it definitely has given me something to do during COVID to work on a book. But as far as like hiking and things like that, I kind of just shelved everything for right now. It's hard for me to be in limbo. Like I am a very like structured person that likes my spreadsheets and stuff. So for me, it's better to like not keep making plans that then are going to get postponed. It's easier to say I'm not doing anything. So I actually don't have anything planned. So I've been able to plant a garden and read a lot and do a lot of the things that usually don't happen because I'm too busy traveling or hiking all the time. But I do plan hopefully to do my first bikepacking trip this year, and I'm really excited about that because it will just be different. And I'm definitely at a point where like I like trying new things and doing different things. So I'm really looking forward to giving that a try and seeing what that's like. I've gone out on a couple of preliminary bike rides, and it's been fun. It's been different, but it's been fun.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm impressed. I like my feet. I don't even want to teach my kids how to bike. I'm like, it's too fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like the slowest cyclist on earth though. Like I'm using my husband's really fancy, like expensive bike that he got when he did an Ironman. And it's like so fast. Like you basically don't have to pedal. Like it just rides itself. I mean, and like I still go like 10 miles an hour or less. I mean, it's made to go like way faster than I'm like, no, I don't want to go that fast. Too fast.
Wheels. What is this invention?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so it comes to the time where I want to thank Heather. I loved ending it with her. It's just, you know, so appropriate. I feel very connected and inspired to Heather. I'm so grateful to have her here. But this whole process was a total pivot when we hit coronavirus, and we wanted to stay engaged and offer outdoor content to our audience. And every single book talk has just been like so encouraging. It's been such an honor for me to talk to some of my author heroes, hiking heroes, help share their stories, bring attention to their books, which are all incredible. So thank you if you've joined on. It's kept me accountable to reading, which is really good. And we're hoping to offer another book club, which maybe, hopefully, we can have
Hopefully.
one of Heather's older new books in next year. But yeah, I think it'll be probably winter 2021. Right now, trails are opening up, and that was the thought. We were like, let's do this online stuff until we can get outdoors and have an adventure. So I hope this has encouraged the folks who have followed along with us to plan their own adventures, to get outside, to find that nature therapy, to take a deep breath. And whether you want to challenge yourself or sit on a log, it doesn't matter. There is something so powerful about spending time outdoors. Thank you for the ATC for being constant guardians of the trail and for helping promote these book talks and the authors as well. And to wrap us up, I want to send us with one paragraph from The Pursuit of Endurance that sums up so much of, I think, what we've all been experiencing over the past few months. So here we go. We all have our long trails, and most of them do not include much hiking or running. Outside the forest, our paths take the form of higher education, climbing out of debt, navigating a career, staying married, undergoing divorce, getting through Corona. I added that, but you know, same idea. Surviving tragedy, and coping with illness. And it helps us all to not come to quick conclusions about other people's paths, and instead approach each individual with encouragement and compassion. Because we might be on different trails, but we are all mid-journey. So thank you. Good luck on your journeys. If you're interested in signed copies of The Pursuit of Endurance or any of the books we featured on the Armchair Adventure Book Club, they're available author signed at blueridgehikingco.com. And we will see you at a safe social distance on the trail. So signing off. Thank you guys. Thank you, Heather. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.